You may not realize it, but you've been enjoying the work of our guest today for years. Find out who that is next on City Corner. Hi, I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. Our guest today is J.B. Forbes. He's the chief photographer for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. J.B., welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I said in the beginning that people have been enjoying your work for years. Probably, if they're like most people, you know, when they see a photograph in a newspaper or magazine or read an article, you don't often notice the byline.
Most definitely.
I'm sorry about that.
No, that's very true. And even some of my neighbors are surprised at what I do, but I've been doing it a long time now.
You've been at the Post-Dispatch how long?
I started in August of 1975, and it was my fourth newspaper. I worked for the Topeka Capital Journal while I was still going to that other University of Kansas. And then after I graduated, my first full-time job was at the Parsons Sun in Parsons, Kansas. And then I was asked to come down to Miami, Florida, where I spent 2 years, and then came to the Post-Dispatch.
What lured you to St. Louis?
I had a friend from Topeka who had come to St. Louis, and he called me up and said, there's an opening, you ought to come up here. And I said, well, I don't want to keep jumping from job to job. And he said, how much are you making in Miami? And Miami is a very expensive city. And I told him, he said, well, you'll be making double that here. And I said, okay, I'll be there.
Wow. Of course, at the time, I don't know how it ranks now, but you know, for a long time, Post-Dispatch was a pretty prominent newspaper in this country. It
was. It was one of the top 10 for a long time. We have slipped somewhat on our rankings and our size, but we're still trying to cover the city and make a difference here.
Well, this is a whole different show, but of course, you know, print journalism is facing a lot of challenges, as is, say, you know, radio and television too these days.
It is, and just almost on a weekly basis, I see some of my colleagues leave, and we've had buyouts and layoffs and retirements, and over the past 6 years, over 640 employees of the Post-Dispatch have left. So it is quite a change for all of us, and it's a skeleton crew from what we used to have.
Yeah, the glory days. At least you were part of it, right?
I was, and I truly enjoyed it.
You just got back from a really exciting trip, which we're going to see some of your photographs in the second half of this show, but you went with a reporter from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, I guess embedded is the right word, with some troops in Afghanistan.
Correct. Jesse Bogan, the reporter with the Post, and I were gone for a month, but we spent 2.5 weeks embedded with the 1138th Missouri National Guard Engineering Company. And it was very intense and very interesting, and I was so glad I got to go and to highlight what these men were doing and trying to take care of each other and bring all of the troops home safely. They are the mine clearing unit, and so their job was to go out on the roads and look for IEDs, which was pretty harrowing to and be embedded with them and ride with them and see what they did.
Not your typical St. Louis beat.
No, I generally don't have to make a will out to go down and cover South St. Louis.
Oh, wow. Well, there's some great photographs that we're going to share in the second part of the show. Let me just say that you've won numerous awards for your work over the years, so congratulations for all of that, and including a couple recently.
The big one, the one that I am most proud of, is I was elected into the Missouri Photojournalism Hall of Fame a year ago, and I was really surprised. It was unexpected, and I thought you had to be retired or dead to get into the Hall of Fame, and I had to check twice to make sure I was still pumping to when they...
That Afghanistan trip could have taken care of that.
It could have. Thankfully, I'm back with family.
Well, I asked you, JB, to pick out some of your photographs that were special to you, meant something to you. We're going to look at some of those. Now, were all of these published in the Post-Dispatch or not?
Yes, yes. The ones I've chosen, yes.
But I imagine in your collection you have many, many that have never seen print.
Lots of them. And I really enjoy shooting nature and art photography, things that generally don't make our paper. So a friend of mine and I are on weekends are usually up in Clarksville photographing the eagles and
really?
out at nature preserves and looking for wildlife and scenic pictures other than the news and fires and things that I cover here in St. Louis.
You get arty sorts of shots of the paper once in a while.
Every once in a while. That's my goal, yes.
Well, as I said, I asked you to pick out something that meant something to you, so why don't we begin looking at those, and you can tell us the history to them.
On this particular day, I was out searching for features, and I saw this storm coming, and I knew it looked intense, it was coming quickly, and I wanted an area where I could see something in the foreground, but also have enough room to see all of the what was going on up in the sky. So
there's a lot going on there.
There is, and I made my way to Jefferson Barracks, and I was able to photograph right up until the time that the rain came pouring right through the through the window.
So it's like, how many shots do you take before you get that perfect lightning strike right over on the side where you want it?
Oh gosh, I was posed and ready, and every time I'd see a lightning go off, I'd hit the button, and I missed quite a few times, and until this long thing hit, and I was able to get one. So
that's beautiful. Let's go to the next one.
This is from a funeral that I covered, a very sad event. Two St. Louis firefighters died. I think that was about 7-8 years ago. Both of them died together, and I am blanking on the name at the moment. The widow and her daughter. It was quite an event.
Let's go to the next.
This is one of my favorites, and I get a lot of good response to this picture because every year I'm out there, not every year, but I've covered the Forest Park balloon race many years, and the goal is to not come back with the same thing year after year. So I went out looking for a different angle, and I drove over to the tennis courts in Forest Park, and here were people playing, and it produced something a little different.
Yeah, you know, it occurs to me, JB, when you're talking about that, you have kind of a cool job in a lot of ways because it seems like you have a lot of freedom.
I do.
To sort of make decisions for yourself. You know, a lot of people that are working, you have to check this box and then do this and do that, and they kind of turn you loose.
They do. They turn me loose and give me a certain amount of freedom and trust that I'm out there looking and trying to do my best and trying to come back with something for the paper.
But also are there times when they say, you know, we need a photo from this specific event or something that's going on in South St. Louis, we need you there?
Oh yeah, almost daily. As we talked about a little earlier, as soon as I leave here, I'll be out there on Pope Watch looking for pictures to go with folks that are waiting for the news of who the next pope is going to be.
Well, this show's taped. It's going to air over a few weeks period, so by the time people see this, that will have already happened.
They will know.
But it'll be good to know that you're on Pope Watch. Or we're on Pope Watch. Let's look at some more photographs from J.B. Forbes. That's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I took this picture in my backyard. My wife and I boarded horses at our place in Fenton for 25 years, and I was out feeding horses one morning when a huge snowflake started to fall, and here was this beautiful spotted Appaloosa horse out there in our pasture, and I stopped feeding and ran back to the house, got my camera, and came back down and took this picture.
Somehow the white spots on the horse really play off the snow, don't they?
They do, and I don't take as many pictures as I could. We still have horses. My daughter's taken over the business, and she does a great job, and we've got horses at our place. When you've got barns and horses right there on your property, it isn't so artistic. All I ever see is work.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's what I've done over the years.
Let's look at two more.
I was not even working this day when then candidate Obama came to town, and I wanted to be at the event down at the Arch, and so it was my day off. I went down there, I took my cameras, and we had somebody assigned from the paper to cover it, but I was very pleased with.
That's a great shot. I remember that day because I was driving down the highway right downtown and was going under the overpasses when the crowds were there, so that sticks in my mind. I wish I'd been on the site like you were. Let's take a look at one more.
This picture was from a tragic event. It was a tornado that came through central Missouri and hit up north of Columbia and close to a town called Rennick, Missouri. And I drove up there looking for damage, from tornado damage, and I came upon this scene. And this young man was out in this field picking up articles, and this woman came up and hugged him, and I got this picture. And it turned out that he was living with his girlfriend in his girlfriend's parents' trailer. And what you see behind that young man is the trailer. And it was totally destroyed. The parents were both killed. His girlfriend's back was broken, and he had spent the night with her in the hospital until she was stabilized. And then he came back out to that field looking to see if there was anything of value from the trailer to still pick up.
Wow. You know, when you're telling the story, when you're telling the backstory like that, it makes me think that's what makes a good photograph. I mean, obviously you wouldn't know the details by looking at it, but the picture hints at a lot of that, doesn't? A good photograph kind of makes you guess at the backstory.
You're trying to tell as much of the story as possible through the photographs, but anytime you can add the background, it just brings out that much more.
Do you ever get a chance to, in your photographs, to tell the background? I mean, you know, in print?
Well, sure. I write the cut lines for my pictures, and on occasion they'll even trust me enough to let me do stories to go along with them.
Wow. We've got an incredible story coming up next. JB just got back recently, fairly recently, from Afghanistan, where he was embedded with troops there, and we have some fascinating photographs. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. learn the body language, and spot a stroke fast.
I'm Steve Potter. Welcome back to City Corner. And today we're talking with J.B. Forbes. He's the chief photographer for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And how many years did you say you've worked there?
I'm on my 38th year.
You didn't start as chief photographer, I'm guessing.
No. I was low man on seniority for many years, and so that meant I worked all nights and weekends. And then that changed eventually, and I did lots of sports, and then lots of spot news, and then I started traveling for the
So are you a quote-unquote journalist?
A photojournalist is what I'd call myself.
What kind of degree do you have?
It's actually a liberal arts degree in photojournalism.
Really? Mm-hmm. Huh. Interesting. Well, this is going to be a great segment here because let's recap. You just returned with a reporter from the Post-Dispatch from an embedded trip with troops in Afghanistan.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, for me, it was different from the reporter. I went to my boss, a photo editor, Lyndon Steele, back in November and said, I just watched a show on radio, or listened to a show on radio, and they mentioned that neither one of the political candidates had talked about Afghanistan and the war at all. And it is all but forgotten, and it is such a hot potato issue that nobody wants to touch it. And yet, we've got all of these local guys and gals still over there risking their lives for all of us. And I said, we need to do something about that. And if an assignment comes up in Afghanistan, put me at the top of the list, please. And at about that same time, reporter Jesse Bogan was in contact with the Missouri National Guard, and he knew that the 1138th Engineering Company, based in Farmington, was over there. And he was starting the ball rolling in hopes of getting over there. And eventually the Guard said yes, and then we had to get the Post to say yes, and then the whole military has to say yes, and then Afghanistan has to say yes. So there's all sorts of things that had to happen, and it all came together on January 15th when we left.
Yeah, we were talking about budgets, like a newspapers thing. That had to be that was an expensive commitment for them to agree to.
It was, but they liked the part that we were going to be embedded with the troops, so less cost right there, but it was the plane flights over there and back, and whatever other expenses that came along, and they bought us some fairly healthy insurance, life insurance, while we were there.
Oh, I'll ask you about that later. That's a whole other story. Why don't we begin with 5 pictures that you took in Afghanistan?
We were out on patrol, on missions with these guys, and they ride in these very heavy, well-armored vehicles, and they're out on the roads looking for IEDs. And it's very dangerous work, it's very intense work, and they do not get out. They don't mingle at all with the local populace, and so their view of Afghanistan, of that outside world, is through the windows of their vehicles. And so that's what some of these pictures are, and that was my view. And so when I take pictures, I'm showing not only what they see, but also the netting that's on the outside of their trucks. There was netting on some, bars on others, and that's there for a reason. It's to stop RPGs. And they'd much rather have the RPG explode on the netting than on the side of the truck.
Right.
So it was just a defensive mode, and that's what these guys were seeing. And so when we would stop along the side of the road, there was a couple of times when our trucks broke down. I asked, and they gave me permission to climb out through the gunner's hatch. Now, I can't get down on the ground, but they let me out to just to climb up there and take pictures of the world passing by, and that gave me an opportunity to see some of the locals. This was when we went through the gate into the Afghan side of our base where we were staying, and it's divided because of all of the controversy and danger that's going on right now, because the Americans are trying to train the Afghans to be able to take care and protect their own country, but as soon as they give them guns, then some of these guys are turning those guns on the Americans, so the base is divided. So we made a request and went over to their side of the base, and I was able to take some pictures.
We have 2 more.
This is the cook on the Afghan side handing out meals. And these were locals from the local villages lined up to get uniforms and be inducted into the local security force.
JB, you mentioned meals there a second ago, and I'm sure this was the least thing on your mind, but what was eating like?
Well, it was wonderful, actually, because we ate on the base.
That wasn't the answer I was expecting.
We ate with the soldiers on the base, and they have a great chow line there. And they said they told us that we were very lucky because they just upgraded to a chow line from MREs, and those meals ready to eat are not fun and they're not great to eat. But a chow line, it was like going through the training camp line at the Rams.
Really?
Oh, it was great. I gained weight in the time I was there.
Wasn't what I was expecting to hear. But how about this? So you have this idea to go to Afghanistan, and finally you get the okay to go. Weren't there any times when you were at home thinking, what have I done?
Well, when I agreed to go, I hadn't gotten the word yet that this was the 1138th, and their job was to go out and look for IEDs. So my boss, the photo editor, Lyndon Steele, gave me several opportunities to back out. And he said, you can change your mind at any time. And I said, no, I told you I'm committed to this. I want to go. I've been in several war zones over the years. I was in Iraq in 2004. I was in Bosnia twice, in Kosovo once, and I covered war in Central America back in the 80s. So I'm fairly familiar with...
Not that you're old or anything, but the older you get, you take less, that's my experience, you take less risks.
Less risk instead of more. Well...
Yeah, that's backwards.
I'm not ready to sit in that rocking chair just yet.
Let's look at 5 more photographs that J.B. Forbes took in Afghanistan.
These were the locals putting on their new uniforms, and they were fairly modest, and they put them on right over the top of their local clothing. And and then they were given a certificate and told that they could be basically security guards for their village. This was one of the vehicles we traveled in. This is called an RG, and it's heavily armored. It weighs almost 85 tons, carries 6 passengers, and has a machine gun turret on top, and has all kinds of electronics inside, something that I could not photograph. That was one of the few stipulations of things I couldn't do. And here was my guys from the 1138th, and they had just been told that, yes, they were going to have to go on this one dangerous mission, and the guy on the lower left is their lieutenant, and he gave them a pep talk and emphasized safety and said, okay, let's go do this. So it was almost like a hands-on type of sporting event there at the end. And these 2 young men are both lead drivers in the convoys. And they ride in vehicles where they are the only one in the vehicle. It's called a Husky. It has ground seeing radar. And so they drive along these dirt roads at 2 miles an hour, looking down into the ground, trying to identify IEDs and hoping that they find all of them, which rarely happens. And this is when one of our vehicles broke down, and we had guards out and around us watching the local populace just in case anything did happen.
You know, looking at these troops and things, and you're spending time with them, it's one thing to sit home in St. Louis and maybe you don't know anybody in the service, just to, you know, and you still feel for these people, but you're there and you're developing relationships. Did it change your way of thinking, or?
Well, one of these guys, one of these Husky drivers, is a cook at a restaurant in South County, and other guys are doing just everyday jobs, regular jobs here in St. Louis, in Farmington, and Peevely, and all around.
Yeah, my point is, though, you're becoming friends with these people. Did you become concerned about their safety? Is that something you thought about when you got back?
Absolutely, and they're supposed to come back in May. Their time is supposed to be up in either late May, early June, and I very much want to be there and see them come home. And one of the nicest things that any of them said to me was, on our last day as we were leaving, one of the soldiers came up and said, "You've been embedded with us, you've lived with us, you've gone on missions with us, you're now one of us." And I thought that was a tremendous compliment.
Let's look at 5 more of your photographs from Afghanistan. Wow.
This was a practice that they do. It was a practice explosion where they go out in the field outside of the base and blow up IEDs just for the practice of making sure that they know how to do that. So after they discover them in the road, they dig them up, and then they have to get rid of them, so they explode them. So they back their trucks up, they shoot a charge out that goes over the top of the IEDs, and then they set them off. And when I asked what was going to happen, they said that I was going to be stuck inside one of those trucks right next to the explosion. I said, well, I won't get a picture that way, so I stayed at the base and shot from there.
We just have a couple of minutes left. Let's see how many we can take a look at quickly.
The one day that I was able to walk into a village, and I sat down and had lunch in a local restaurant, and ended up talking with this man through an interpreter, the man on the left, and he had fought with the Mujahideen against the Russians for 22 years and lost over 15 of his family members. This was our convoy going past an Afghan cemetery.
Let's look at one more.
And this was one of our soldiers, a sergeant, standing on the road guarding us when one of our vehicles broke down.
I don't know, that's kind of a good final shot for us today for some reason.
It was quite a trip. It was very intense, and hopefully we got the word out about all these people.
How did this change your life? Because I'm guessing it had to.
It changed it. I was just very impressed with the commitment these young men had. There was no women in the company. Otherwise, I'd talk about both. But they were very committed, and they're out there doing a job, and yet they're very anxious to get back home to their families here in Missouri.
Yeah. Well, you have a website, I should say, that we're going to have some information come up on a screen in a moment, so people can take a look at these photographs and more.
Yes, they have to do a little searching on our stltoday.com/multimedia and get to the Afghanistan page.
So what's next for you? How are you going to top this?
Oh, that's a good question. Hopefully, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, and the paper will have the confidence in me to send me out on more of these stories.
No doubt. J.B. Forbes is the chief photographer for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and we'll be watching for your byline this time, I promise. Thank you so much for sharing this with us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for City Corner. I'm Steve Potter. Join me next time.